We are the Department of Health and Human Services.
Last year, HHS acquired approximately over $26 billion in contracts alone. $5 billion of those dollars went to small businesses. The purpose of Access to Success is to help bridge the gap between the government and small businesses' access to acquiring federal contracts.
If you are a small business owner looking to expand your business, we invite you to visit our website at hhsaccesstosuccess.com.
Well, good afternoon and a heartfelt welcome to everybody. My name is Linda Waters, and I'm the Deputy Director for Administration and Programs and the National Outreach Director here at the United States Department of Health and Human Services, Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization, otherwise known as OSDBU. We're excited that you're joining us today as we continue our Access to Success A2S Small Business 3 of 4 Listing Lab series. Before I introduce you to our moderator, Katrina Brisbane, for today's Listing Lab, let me take a moment to talk to you about the Access to Success website. Based on your survey responses, we are acknowledging your feedback and took immediate action to update and rebrand our A2S website. Aside from being our registration site, it provides more customer engagement, which allows the following. An introduction page for all of our previous listing labs and upcoming events, which includes event videos. An About Us page. Also, resources to assist small businesses. We also have the A2S Insider Hub, which will highlight our podcast when we launch. We will also introduce our e-matchmaking segment at our national virtual conference scheduled for June 3rd, 9th, and 10th. Stay tuned for our exciting and robust presentations. Don't miss out on continuous resources to grow your business. For updates regarding any of our events, access to our website at any time, www.hhsaccesstosuccess.com. Our panel discussion today will be Engaged to Connect. I would like to start with introducing our moderator, Katrina Brisbane, the Associate Deputy Assistant Secretary for Acquisitions and the Deputy Senior Procurement Executive for the United States Department of Health and Human Services, as well as the Acting Director for OSDBU. As you can see, she wears many hats. So without further ado, welcome, Katrina.
Thank you very much, Linda. Good afternoon, everyone. As Linda mentioned, I've got quite a few hats I'm wearing as Associate Deputy Assistant Secretary for Acquisitions, the Deputy Senior Procurement Executive, as well as the Acting Director for the HHS Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization. It is indeed my pleasure to welcome you, and I echo Linda's welcome to Engage to Connect. Thank you for investing your time with us today. Without further ado, I'm gonna just jump right in and let you know, the HHS OSDBU is bringing to you an amazing group of panelists today. They're gonna provide you with information on strategies for learning more about HHS opportunities. You'll also get a peek at what's new in SBA for the small business community. There'll also be details about accessing capital for growing your business, details about grants and how to find those opportunities. And then finally, there'll be some information on HHS contracting opportunities. The dialogue today is definitely going to be a critical conversation as well as an important strategic discussion. So our goal is that you leave today with valuable takeaways, a new idea, a fresh perspective, a new strategy, those things, all that will be instrumental in advancing your business opportunities. So get your pens and paper ready to take lots of notes. So on our agenda, just to cover that a little with you before we jump into the questions, on our agenda, we'll begin with a brief introduction of the panel. They'll introduce themselves to you. And afterwards, I will briefly cover a few highlights on HHS Spend. Next, I'll kick off the conversation with the questions to the panel. That'll draw those high-level themes and strategic conversations that you are actually joined us to hear about today. And then finally, in the second half of the agenda, I'll open up the floor to give you an opportunity to ask specific questions that you may have been thinking about and that will help you to navigate HHS and increase your business opportunities. So without further delay, I'll have the panel members to introduce themselves. We'll begin with Mr. Tommy Marks, and then over to Dr. Sandra Webb, and then Mr. Sam Lee, and then finally, Mr. Cameron Hernandez. Over to you, Tommy.
Good afternoon, Katrina. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm very glad to be here. I'm Tommy Marks. I'm the director of the Minority Business Development Agency's Federal Procurement Center located in Alexandria, Virginia, which is a part of the Department of Commerce. My center actually is a part of a consortium run by Sharon Pender, who's the president and CEO of the Capital Region Minority Supply Development Council. We work with minority companies strictly in the federal space. Prior to taking this position, I was the Army's Director of Small Business Programs from 2015 to 2018. I'm glad to be here and glad to share and ready to try to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Sandra Webb. I'm the Associate Deputy Assistant Secretary for Grants at the Administration for Children and Families here at HHS. We are the largest grant portfolio in the federal government and award over $60 billion every year, including a large amount of funds for the CARES Act, which recently came out. The Office of Grants Management is located all over the country, both here in Washington and in the regions. And we process the grant funding for all of the programs that HHS has within the Administration of Children and Families. So I'm looking forward to talking with you about how to balance out both contracts and grants.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sam Lee. I'm the Deputy Associate General Counsel for Procurement Law at the U.S. Small Business Administration. SBA's mission on the procurement side is to provide for maximum practicable opportunity for small businesses in government contracting, including as prime contractors and subcontractors. And we work closely with small businesses through operation of our socioeconomic programs and in working with agencies to ensure that they are meeting the federal government-wide small business goals. Our programs include the 8A program, the Mentor Protege program, the Women-Owned Small Business program, a program for service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses, and a program for businesses in historically underutilized business zones, which are called hub zones. I've been at SBA for over a decade now, and I've seen a lot of progress in making sure that we provide businesses the information that they need to compete in government contracting. It's a wonderful experience to be with you today, and I look forward to the questions.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Cameron Hernandez. I'm the Division Director for Business Operations within the Office of Government Contracting Services here at the Administration for Children and Family. I'm excited to be here to talk about what we're doing in the procurement space as related to contracts on behalf of our customers throughout ACF. My background is I've been a program official that's always lived within a procurement shop environment. So I have a unique perspective as I understand the dialects of both the contracting officers and specialists and then our program officials who own and fund their requirements. I'm very excited to be here to talk about some activities and business opportunities that are going to be made available as part of ACF's continued mission to support the American people moving forward. And thank everybody for your participation at today's event.
Thank you to all our panel members. Just one point of reference that I want to add to this discussion on the introduction of our panelists. They bring to you today a wealth of experience that covers a broad spectrum. So I would offer that you take a moment to make sure that you're taking copious notes and know that the data points that you're going to receive today are going to be applicable to your current and ongoing business strategies. There may be strategies that you'll begin to implement right away. Some may be those that you'll need to gather additional information on and maybe for implementation in the future. And then there'll be those details that are for future strategies, which likely means that you'll take those notes and then you'll refer to them in future strategy building sessions within your companies. So I look forward to the discussion, and I'm sure that you do as well. And what I see, it is time for our first polling question. Let's see, what do we have here? All right. So I heard about today's listening lab from, wow, looks like the email blast actually is very productive for us. And so it looks like 40% of our participants today heard about the listening lab through the email blast. Wonderful. The second highest is from PTAX and SBA. And then there's actually the second highest is other, and then it's PTAX and SBA. So wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate you answering those questions for us. You will have those polling questions that will come to you throughout this presentation today. So be on the lookout for them. Before we jump right into the questions with the panelists, I'm going to just cover a few brief highlights on HHS Spend. You heard a few things from the panelists already. And so I'm going to just give you a few other data points that are good pieces to know, and a little bit about what small businesses are doing for HHS in helping to advance the HHS mission. In FY20, HHS spent approximately $40.7 billion in contract obligations. And that's across the organization, across all of HHS in various lines of business. Small businesses, however, the spend to small businesses in fiscal year 2020 was $9.2 billion out of that $40.7 billion. Small businesses also participated in advancing HHS's mission towards combating coronavirus. The spend on COVID to the small businesses were $1.9 billion. Small business spend for non-COVID mission-related contracts were $7.2 billion. Next slide, please. And just to give a little peek in the top 3 areas producing the largest revenue for small business in the HHS contracting portfolio, the top 3, as you can see from the slide there, information technology, $2.6 billion, professional services, $2.2 billion, and research and development at $2 billion. This gives you an opportunity to see where small businesses are adding value across the taxonomies in our contracts portfolio at HHS. And we all continue to look to do more business with HHS in this fiscal year and the coming years. I want to just add a couple highlights for you. You know, we are still in the fight against the coronavirus, COVID-19. And so wanted to let you know just a couple pieces of information there. Last year, HHS spent an additional $13.2 billion than its normal spend, which makes up that $40.7 billion. But $13.2 billion was spent on COVID. 1.9 of that, as I mentioned earlier, was small business spend on COVID. Dr. Webb also mentioned to you grant support. HHS, out of what the federal government gave to agencies, or Congress gave to agencies to support initiatives on the combat of COVID-19, was HHS received $252 billion. Of that $252 billion, as I mentioned earlier, $13.2 billion was spent on contracts that went to various businesses, with $1.9 billion going to small businesses. What that means is approximately 200 and I don't do public math, but about 245 or so billion were expended in grants. And that's just on the COVID-19 funding that HHS received. So it gives you just a little highlight of what HHS spends on contracts as well as grants. And Dr. Webb also highlighted for you that HHS spends an enormous amounts just even before COVID on grants, approximately $500 billion a year. All right. Our next polling question here. Which president of the United States made this famous quote? A leader is someone who brings people together. Okay, the answers are in. Barack Obama was our leading answer here. All right. Thank you very much. So we're going to jump right on into our questions with our panelists. The moment that you all are have been waiting for. And so I thank you for investing your time with us. I believe you're going to leave here today with many takeaways. So please get your pens and paper ready and be ready to take notes, because I do believe that you're going to get quite a bit of information that's going to really be helpful in building your business opportunity strategies. So our first question is going to be to Mr. Tommy Marks today. First question, after talking about all the HHS spend, leads us into a question that has to do with capital, cash, resources, or just money, whatever you want to call it. And not sure about you, but in this kind of a discussion, when I hear about dollars, funding, or cash, my ears perk up. So, Tommy, could you please let us know a few items here with regards for our entrepreneurs here who are often maybe looking for resources to acquire funding when trying to expand their business or even starting out. And as we all know, sometimes finding suitable resources can be a challenge. So could you share with our audience information on resources from which small businesses can gain access to capital to continue growing their business base and be best postured to successfully compete and perform on new opportunities?
Yes, ma'am. And I'm not the finance guy. I majored in health and physical education, but over the years, trying to manage my own finances. But they're really about 8 areas, places that you can go and look for capital. And some people probably already know this, but the first and foremost is your own money when you're starting your business up, if you're a startup. And those that are already in business know that to be true. Then there's a thing called, and in my research, I learned a little bit, a thing called love money. That's when you're trying to borrow from your family members, which you got to be very careful of when you do that. And then there's venture capital. And with venture capital, that's working with folks that really in the technology-driven businesses and companies with high growth potential. And then there's angels. And angel funding comes from very wealthy people. And so I will tell you that I'm not one of those just yet, but when I get to be one, I'll advertise. But those are very wealthy people or retired company executives that are really experts in their field that invest in small firms to help them get started or either scale their businesses. And then, of course, there's the government, and we're going to hear more about the government on the government side of the house. And grants is a big revenue stream, if you will, or a resource stream where you can get capital. But you got to be willing to take the time to understand what those grants are all about and what the requirements are that you must adhere to in order to be successful with those grants. And then most common of all, though, is bank loans. And we know during this pandemic, we heard a lot about companies not even being able to get money from their banks, even banks that they've been doing business with. But bank loans are still the most common for small and medium-sized companies. The other one, Katrina, is a lot of, don't know about is the Community Development Financial Institution Fund that the government runs is a source of funding for companies that are in distressed communities that you can look into that. And then the other source is the SBA, and you can find out more about it at the SBA.gov, but SBA does do lending. They've got several programs. They've got the 7A loan program, which is really the largest financing program that the SBA has, up to $5 million max on the loan. Then they've got what they call cap lines, which you can establish some lines of credit. Then there's an SBA Express loan that the SBA works with, along with a community advantage loan. There are micro loans, and then there's a 504 certified development company loan. And you can learn more, and that one's up to 5.5 million for manufacturing or public policy projects, or 5 million. And you can learn more about those on SBA.gov, or reach out to your regional SBA office, where they have the experts that can talk to you in detail about the funding resources that are available there.
All right, thank you, Tommy. So our next question, and I do believe that that was a great segue to Dr. Webb. So Dr. Webb.
Yes.
HHS is indeed the largest grant-making agency in the federal government, with approximately 500 to 550 billion in grants issued each fiscal year. Would you share with our audience information on what is a grant, who is eligible to take advantage of grant opportunities, and how would small businesses locate these opportunities?
Sure. Thanks, Katrina. The grant world is very similar to the contract world, but it does have some major differences. So if you are interested in finding out about grants, we have a central website called grants.gov. It's actually run by HHS, but it is available and has opportunities for the entire federal government. And if you go on that website, you can search a variety of ways. You can search by topic. So if you're interested in whether a grant agency is supporting training opportunities, or whether you're interested in specific types of social services, you just type in the words that you're interested in, and different opportunities will come up across the federal government. You can also search by agency. So it was mentioned about the Small Business Administration. So if you want specific grants from that agency, you can search by agency. The great thing about grants.gov is that anyone can search it. But if you actually want to apply, you go in and you register, and it walks you through it. And they have a virtual workspace where you can put all your materials, and then you send everything in electronically. So it's pretty easy to do. And it lists all of the deadlines, all the open opportunities. It even lists some closed opportunities, but you can look at what people are interested in from a federal agency standpoint, and then perhaps prepare an application in the future. The difference between a grant and other types of federal instruments is that a grant is for a public purpose. So you won't find the kinds of things where it's to develop a particular type of business, but it is for a public purpose. So we have a lot of grants, for example, that fund educational opportunities, like Head Start is a very big grant program. And there are really two different types of grants. There's discretionary grants and there's mandatory grants. Mandatory grants are determined by Congress to go to a particular type of entity, like a state government, a tribal government. Discretionary grants are usually competitive. So you'll see that it lays out a variety of different goals that the grant is designed to achieve. And then if you're eligible, and that's probably the main message I want to leave, is when you're on grants.gov and you find a great opportunity, before you put a lot of time and effort into an application, make sure you read the eligibility requirements. Because if you're not an eligible organization, you'll get kicked out before anyone actually reads your application. And so it's very important that you look and see if a nonprofit is eligible, if a profit-making company is eligible, if you have to be a government entity. So there's a lot of things about eligibility that are very important. And most grantee agencies have a contact information. So if you have any question at all, you should definitely get in touch with them and ask about whether you're eligible and any particular type of requirements that you might have to have in order to get the grant. But that's the main difference, is that a grant is for a public purpose. And when you read the application, you'll see that that's what they're looking for.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Webb. So hopefully everyone wrote that down, grants.gov. Our next question this afternoon is to Mr. Sam Lee. Thank you, Sam. You are representing the Small Business Administration on the panel today. Thank you for being with us.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Katrina.
Yes, so the question for this afternoon is that we've all been made aware of the ongoing conversations regarding acquisitions under the new administration. There's quite a bit of chatter, nothing specific, however. So if you could share with us today, what are some of the new or recent developments in SBA's contracting programs, and what regulatory changes are anticipated to be issued for by SBA in the next year?
That's a great question. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk a bit about all the work that we've done at SBA to try to improve the environment for small business contractors. We've done a lot in the last year and a half, and we expect to do more under the new administration. Just as we went into the pandemic and during the pandemic, we issued new changes to virtually all of our programs, from the 8A program to the Mentor Protege program, Service-Able Vet, Women-Owned Small Business, and Hub Zone. So there are changes in every single program. And because of the pandemic, Congress has directed SBA to make even more changes to make the programs more flexible for small businesses that might be hurting, that might have been affected by COVID-19. So one of the big actions that we just took last month was to add a year to the 8A program term for all firms that are in the 8A program as of September of 2020. So anybody who was in the 8A program as of September should have gotten a notice from SBA that now your 9-year 8A term has become a 10-year 8A term. And that gives you some more time to ramp up and reach out to federal agencies to market your wares and make the most out of your participation in the program. In other areas, we've made major changes to the Mentor Protege program. We used to have 2 separate programs, all small and 8A, and now it's one program together, the SBA Mentor Protege program. And that simplifies the application for folks that want to get into the Mentor Protege program. You can just go online to certify.sba.gov and submit your application there. And after that, you should be hearing from SBA in a faster manner than when everything was done on paper and you mail it in, go to the local office and then go up to headquarters. Now it's all online and it's much easier to get into that program. And we've also made some changes around that program in terms of getting rid of one of the requirements in the joint venture rules about being limited to 3 contracts per joint venture. And we eliminated some of the requirements for SBA to approve joint ventures. Joint ventures, by the way, are one of the big advantages to the Mentor Protege program. And just one more point about what we've been doing at SBA before I talk a bit about some of the new legislation. We've also recently introduced a certification program, a free certification program for women-owned small businesses. For many years, women-owned small businesses have been able to self-certify in sam.gov as women-owned and then get access to set-asides. They were able to pay third parties to get certification. But now under SBA's certification program, you can go to certify.sba.gov and get free access to a certification portal. The other side of that is to win a set-aside, you actually have to be certified now. An agency started to roll that through. I think GSA put together a requirement just last week to say, now to get a GSA women-owned small business set-aside, you have to be certified by SBA, or at least have your application in front of SBA to get certified for SBA, and then SBA will fast track that application. So firms that are used to self-certifying for things like women-owned small business, service-able vet small business, those self-certifications are going away. women-owned is already in place. And then Congress told SBA that within 2 years, we're supposed to put in a certification program for service-able vet-owned small businesses as well. Some other areas that we're looking at on our own or at the behest of Congress is making sure that small businesses can add some previous experience to their past performance. Some small businesses have problems saying, I can't get a contract unless I have past performance, but I can't get past performance unless I get a contract. So, you have this cycle of not being able to access contracting because you don't have past performance. So we're looking at allowing small businesses to use past performance from subcontracts or from joint ventures that they've participated in order to get that past performance and be able to get their first government contract. And then in addition to that, we are directed to look closely at category management. For those people who don't know, category management is the idea that the government is going to try to consolidate its buying among particular agencies, so you don't have every little office within the agency buying separately, or even across the whole government, so that purchases are made government-wide. And for some businesses, that's great because you're selling more, you have a bigger market. For some businesses, it's a little harder because it's harder to get onto these category management vehicles like the GWACs and the multiple award government-wide IDIQ contracts. So SBA is supposed to work with the agencies to educate them on how they can use category management to serve small businesses. And then on the other side, to work with OSDBUs, with your office, to educate the OSDBUs on how they can reach out to small businesses, get them involved in category management.
All right, thank you, Sam. That was a lot of information. Can the participants, if they want to know more about or capturing things that have been done, you've given them a whole lot today, but if they want to keep trend and keep track of things that are going on in SBA with regards to their equities, where would they go to find that information? Would it just be on the SBA's website?
Well, I want to put a shout out to the OSDBUs too. If you're working closely with HHS, then I think you can reach out to people like Katrina and Linda Waters at the agency to have an idea of how the agencies are implementing this. But yes, SBA has a lot of this information on its website. If you're an 8A firm, you can go out to your district office and get the information as well. The best source, and I go to it as well, is to go to SBA's news site. And we post all these things as news releases. And you can see, for example, if you're looking for information about that 1-year extension in the 8A program, there's a release up there on the news site to say, here's who qualifies, here's what you do if you were terminated from the program, or actually you graduated from the program and you want to get the extra year. There's a way that you can do that. There's an email address that you can write that's on the website. So SBA.gov is a good source, but I think going to the OSDBUs and the PTACs as well is another way to do it.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. And on to our fourth question here to Cameron Hernandez. So this one's loaded, Cameron, but I think that our audience will thank you significantly. So I myself, along with other acquisition leaders across government, we do receive emails and calls regularly from our industry partners trying to obtain information on procurement strategies for various agencies and specifically for me, for various HHS opportunities. Sometimes the questions are, will the opportunity be on betasam.gov? Will the agency use a best-in-class vehicle to satisfy the requirement? Where can I find the solicitation for X requirement? Can you please share with our industry partners, what are next steps for a small business trying to obtain information on a procurement for an upcoming requirement, and they may not have been able to get information from the contracting officer or the contract specialist. They may have been a little unresponsive or not able to get to their message. Can you help us with that?
Well, yeah, that is a loaded question. So I'll do my best to answer that in parts. I'll tackle how small businesses can better position themselves to get that critical information that allows you to be better positioned to respond to solicitations or announcements when they hit the street. I know a lot of small businesses are hungry for that work. They want to grow their brand. They want to get their products and services, with their customers, with the federal government. But it's really important that small businesses understand that how the government chooses to compete a requirement is wholly based on that requirement. And each requirement is unique in and of itself. And the best example I can give is I can have a service requirement for subject matter experts who support my office today, have another service level, service requirement for my office tomorrow, and they can be wholly different than the two of them combined. So they really are unique based off of that particular requirement that the government is trying to compete and how best to compete that, because I can't stress this enough. We want strong, healthy competition. We want every viable performer out there, small business, who can provide that service, who can provide that technology, those experts, whatever it may be, product or service, or a combination of the two, to have access to, visibility on, and to propose and compete for that work. I know there's a lot of adages about incumbents and how incumbents are sometimes, given an unfair competitive advantage. I can tell you right now, I've been doing this for 20 plus years on the program side, and then working directly with my partners in contracting, because acquisitions is a team sport. I can't stress that enough. Me on the program side, I might own the requirement and all the funding related to it, but that doesn't mean anything if I don't have a business expert, a guiding hand on the contracting officer side who understands all the laws and regulations related to us doing that competition and staying out of an orange jumpsuit, which means it being 100% legal and proper. So for small businesses who are seeking that critical information on how better to position you to respond to solicitations when they hit the street, there are a couple of things you can do. One, you can do your own market research. You can review past solicitations and requirements by agencies by looking at the archived information and what was FedBizOps or what is now beta.sam.gov. That gives you sort of historical context on how, based off of past actions and information being elicited for solicitations, where they've competed those. Are they using full and open competition just for their services, or a combination of services and IT construction facilities? Are they primarily doing some things on schedules versus other things like that? So looking at the history behind how a specific organization competes their requirements gives you some inclination on, are they going to go full and open? Are they going to use a schedule? Are they going to use one of the GWACs, like HHS's own NITAC program for IT competition requirements? The other thing is to participate in events like this. I mean, these are opportunities to hear directly from those agency leaderships about what they're doing, about where they're looking, where they're planning to invest, those taxpayer dollars in needed products and services from you, our invaluable, industry stakeholders. And then also for other events like Industry Days. And I'm going to do a selfish plug. We are hosting an ACF Industry Day 2021 on March 10th. And that's really important to us here at ACF, especially my office, which is the new contracting office supporting all of ACF, because we are in our first year. So we are a startup in the federal government. And it is our mission, to let you know how we are positioned to partner with you, small businesses, in order to support ACF's ongoing and critical missions to American families and children. So that event is, again, March 10th. Registration is still open. You can register and do all those fun things. We are partnered with a corporate sponsor, Professional Services Council, not HHS PSC. I keep telling them to rebrand themselves because they are very confusing when you look at them just on the acronyms. But those events, those industry days that ACF may host, that CDC may host, that DHS or DOD, those are literally word to mouth news on the ground about what they're currently looking at and where they're potentially going to be investing procurement dollars and solicitations in. So those are great opportunities to, one, identify with who are those spokespersons, those procurement officials, those program officials with that organization, and then to get an idea of where they're going to be directing their investments, where they're looking for support from industry. And last but not least, I would say reach out to those individuals directly. Specifically, the second part of the question about, I reached out to that contracting officer I met at this event, and I haven't got a response to that email, or they haven't called me back. I'm not going to defend CEOs' positions on them that they're too busy to sort of do certain things, but I will say 20 plus years, I've never met a CEO who had not enough work to do in any given day. So while they may be fully engaged on competing this requirement or pursuing this solicitation that's going to be hitting the street, I would ask for consideration that they might also be planning for and getting ready to solicit or compete 7, 10, 20 other requirements in addition to managing their already, current portfolio of work. So patience goes a long way. I've been doing this for a number of years where I've had industry program officials want to come in and schedule time with me to do a technical briefing or a capabilities briefing. And I'm just like, hey, let's schedule this tomorrow. Let's reschedule this today. And we've maybe had to reschedule 2, 3, 5, 7 times. But it's the ones who continue to engage, who continue to follow up, who continue to make sure that I have no fault of my own to know that they are relevant and prevalent and want to engage with me, are the ones that I circle back with and say, hey, I now have time. Let's sit down. Let's get that 20 minutes. You can talk to me about who you are, what the product or services that you provide. And if I have a potential opportunity to team with you, let's discuss what that might look like. And I think all that's, sort of goes back to the main antithesis of the question, which is how do you get this information? One, understand that how we choose to compete a requirement is wholly based on how that requirement is defined. The best opportunities to compete that is to maximize as much competition as possible, focusing primary first and foremost on our small business community. The second is to be aware of the engagement events that happen, like access to 6 panels like this, industry day events. We just hosted one with our Office of Refugee Reassignment, which was a great opportunity for industry to understand what the ORR office is doing in their mission space. And then lastly, make those personal connections with your program and your contracting officials so that you can have those one-on-one direct engagements with them to say, hey, I am a small business. I specialize in this tool and this service. I would like you to know who I am and remember to who I am so that when you have a need potentially for this product or service or a combination of the two, you already know that there is a strong performer in the market that can meet that need.
Awesome. I hope everyone took copious notes on that. Very, very, very good information. It is time for our next polling question. That question is, how do you think we can best improve small business engagement with information in contracting and grant opportunities? Looks like our answers are up. All right, so we've got 61%. How do we best improve small business engagement with information in contracting and grant opportunities? E-matchmaking with prime contractors and U.S. government contracting staff is our top blow it out of the water response today. All right. Thanks a lot, everyone. Appreciate your taking time to do that. Those answers that you give helps us know how to improve the things that we do and we bring to you. It also provides us information, as you saw earlier, on how is it that we can also continue to let you know about these listening labs and other events that HHS may host for small business information. All right. Dr. Webb, you are up again. You spoke to us earlier about multiple instruments that the federal agencies use to partner with industry on requirements to execute an agency's mission. Can you explain to our audience today the difference between, and you spoke a little bit about what a grant is, but if you could give them a little difference, talk more about what's the difference between a grant and a contract, and then also let them know what's the difference between a grant and a cooperative agreement.
Sure. That's a very good question because it's not very straightforward sometimes. So like the contracting world, the grants world has regulations. And if you're interested in the specific legal definitions, it's in the Code of Federal Regulations. It's 2 CFR 200. And in there, it's the 200, 240 series that gives all these specific definitions. But in general, as I said, a grant is a direct federal assistance to an organization for a public purpose. Usually there's not a lot of interaction between that agency and the organization once the grant is given, because all of the information is in the application. The agency says, yes, we want to fund that effort. They give the money, and then there's certain reporting requirements, but basically the agency that gets the money or the company that gets the money just goes ahead and does the purpose forever what the length of the grant is, whether it's a year or 2 years. When you look at 2 CFR 200, it mentions contracts, but it doesn't have rules about contracts. It talks about if those funded entities, either through a grant or a cooperative agreement, actually use the federal money for a contract. So it's sort of like a subgrantee or a subcontract. It's a subaward. A lot of entities use contracts and contractors and businesses to help flesh out some of the work. So if they have something that they need to do, but they don't have the expertise in-house, they will typically put a contract vehicle in their budget. And when you read the 2 CFR regulations and they talk about contracts, they're talking about the contracts that a grantee would give with the money that they have received. If you look at it for a cooperative agreement, that's another type of legal federal assistance that's listed in 2 CFR. And it has a lot of similarities to a grant in that it is for a public purpose. It is federal financial assistance. The main difference is that a cooperative agreement requires substantive involvement by the federal granting agency. So what that means in essence is that the money is given based on the application, and then there's probably elements of it where the agency wants to be involved in how that project moves forward. It could be they want to identify what the performance goals are based on maybe some research that the grantee does in the beginning of the program. Or they want to make sure that the training requirements in that are actually matched up to some sort of federal requirement that they're doing. When I was at the Department of Homeland Security, we had to approve all of the training plans before they could actually execute them. So of the federal agencies that I've been at, they all use those different federal assistance vehicles in different ways, depending on, it's a lot like what Cameron was explaining, in that depending on what the requirement is, the agency will choose a different vehicle sometimes to achieve it. And I think if you remember, I talked about discretionary and mandatory grants. Discretionary grants are competitive. And so they're usually grants, but most cooperative agreements are competitive as well. And they allow the agency to really judge, does this organization have the capacity to work with us on whatever they're trying to achieve with that public purpose. Now, you should also, as a company or a possible vendor, look to the state level, because a lot of our mandatory grants are determined by a formula, and the formulas give a certain amount to each state, and then they execute it based on the goals that their states have. So they also use contracts at that level to possibly extend their reach into, in HHS's case, the local communities, to talk about health, human services, support for families, all of those different programs that we do. When I was at the Justice Department, we used cooperative agreements to really set up different kinds of community capacity programs and looking at the different things that we would do from a justice perspective. So each agency uses them different, but it will say specifically in the funding announcement. So when you go on grants.gov, you'll be looking for either a notice of funding opportunity or a funding opportunity announcement. Different agencies use different terminology, but you will see that they will actually tell you whether that instrument is going to be a grant or a cooperative agreement. And it's also worth mentioning that in the 2 CFR 200, I believe it's in the first appendix, it outlines all the different parts that need to be in a funding opportunity announcement. So if you're interested in kind of prepping before you even talk to them, you can go in there and look, and it tells you, how to write your performance goals and how to write your budget and all of that. It's all laid out. It's not mysterious at all. And what the government is trying to do is actually standardize some of that. So if you were going to grants.gov and put together a lot of your materials, you can use them for different types of funding opportunities. And I think it would benefit you to spend some time kind of prepping those materials. And it helps you when you're trying to look at different opportunities. So I hope that answered the question.
Yes, it did. Thank you so much, Dr. Webb. Thanks a lot. I'm going to toss back over to Cameron one more time. Want to ask you about some information you shared a little while ago with regards to small businesses finding specific opportunities and being able to track down opportunities when it's time for recompetes. Very, very good information for our audience to have today. One of the other things that I think the audience would also be interested in is the opportunity to meet with procurement staff and even program staff. Oftentimes before solicitations are released, they'd like to know a little bit more about the key objectives and goals of a requirement. So can you give them just a little information on how they go about trying to create an audience or get an audience with either the procurement staff and the program staff prior to the release of a solicitation?
Awesome, great. Another lovely loaded question. So I'll try to tackle it as concisely as I can and provide that value-added information to our audience. A couple things as far as like getting that sort of insider track and having a better understanding of what the government's looking for performance-wise is that it's really important to understand, the phases of the acquisition process, what can be discussed openly pre-solicitation versus post-solicitation. So pre-solicitation means we haven't put anything formal out, which means we can have open and honest conversations with anyone about a planned requirement or a planned draft procurement. But it means that we also have to maintain procurement integrity the entire time. The best way that I can articulate this concisely is that if I have a meeting today with Acme Corporation about a potential requirement, and then I have a meeting tomorrow with the Umbrella Corp, shout out to all of my nerds out there who understand what those two are, then you have to understand that I am obligated to maintain procurement integrity and provide the same information to Umbrella Corp that I provided to Acme Corp. And this is all in the context of ensuring that anyone who is interested in that potential requirement, that potential draft procurement, has the same information prior to the formal solicitation being released. Government can go a step further and do pre-solicitation conferences and engagement events, which I've done previously on large acquisitions, namely a large service level agreement that we were doing for my entire agency, where we know that there are multiple stakeholders that are performers who can support that requirement. And they all are both, other than small businesses and your small businesses. So we actually bring them all together. And we actually have an engagement event where we say, hey, this is what we are looking to procure. These are our need areas. And, these are what we were hoping to gain from interested parties when they respond to the solicitation when it comes out. And typically in those pre-solicitation engagement events, you have multiple opportunities to submit advanced questions. You get draft RFPs sometimes. You can actually get an understanding of what it is that the government is ultimately looking to procure to better sort of align yourself, form your teaming and partnering arrangements if you choose to go that route or go at it prime. And then ultimately to actually ask questions, to get clarifying statements from the government to say, hey, you stated this, but what do you really mean here? And I can tell you, having sort of done multiple, pre-solicitation conferences and engagements, that's some of the best market research information I've ever received directly from industry performers that helps me better define my requirement. And I can't tell you how satisfying it is if I solicit something as part of my organization or my contracting and program office, and the response I get back when it's all said and done is like, I knew exactly what you were asking for because of the level of engagement that you did before you dropped that RFP or that RFQ. So it really is a teaming effort. So I think a lot of small businesses, when you're looking at how to get that insider track, the main thing, look at those RFIs. That's the main way that the government's going to tell you, I have a draft acquisition that I'm going to probably be soliciting at some point in the near future. You can look at those draft RFPs. That's where we're asking you to weigh in on what is in the realm of possibility, what is in the current state of the art, what is possible that I don't even know exists within the technology space in industry. And all of that is to help me better define my requirements so that we can, again, maximize competition amongst both our small businesses and then in some cases are other than small if it's not a small business set aside. So I think having those, sort of those feelers out there and being tapped into and engaging in those levels, especially with those pre-solicitation conferences, gives you as much information as we can, again, maintaining procurement integrity and ensuring that every potential candidate or performer out there has equal opportunity to bid and propose and compete, is maintained throughout the entire process up until that solicitation actually hits the street. At that point, all the open discussion stops. Your only communications to be to the contracting officer and specialists who are listed on that RFP or that RFQ. And then we adhere to all communication, sort of rules from that going forward. But pre-solicitation, we can have one-on-one meetings, you can engage in pre-solicitation events, you can respond to RFIs, you can respond to draft RFPs and RFQs. Those are the best ways that I can sort of recommend for industry partners who are interested in planned or future procurements to get an idea of what it is that the government is looking to procure and how to frame yourself in order to meet that need.
Thank you, Cameron. Thanks so much. All right, we're winding down here to the last couple questions. Tommy, back to you.
Yes, ma'am.
So there are a few common markets that we know across the federal landscape that small businesses have demonstrated exceptional capabilities. Would you provide our audience with some of those key markets, those key areas for small businesses that they may want to focus on, that in the federal landscape, it's known that they've demonstrated some exceptional capabilities there?
Okay. Yes. So, with the pandemic that we just come through, things are not going to necessarily get back to normal, but what hasn't changed really, and we know the federal government never shut down during this entire time, and we'll hit a year next month on the 13th. And they're still having to buy so they can operate. And some of those key areas are clearly in the information technology arena. Those portfolios are still alive and well for companies to compete for, and because those needs are there. In the healthcare side of the house, both on the Department of Defense, which has probably the largest, and then you tie that with the VA for healthcare, that is still a thriving business and area that we need services, and that the federal government needs services. And that tracks actually with the trends that the McKinsey Group has looked at what's going to happen, Katrina, between 2021 and beyond, on where the spend is going to be and what's going to come back. We're never going back to normal, to what was normal before the pandemic. We'll create a new one. And so those areas, construction is still alive and well. I mean, we're still building things. We're still having to maintain current infrastructure when you talk about facility management. Those are some of the big spend areas. Last year the federal government spent $600 billion. That's not counting COVID dollars. $600 billion just in normal operations. And so construction, facility management, information technology, the healthcare side of the house, transportation and logistics, those are all still viable areas. And so when you tie that to what these independent companies have done, when you look at how the economy has been affected by COVID, some key areas really that companies, even we have requirements. And of course, I'm still speaking French because wasn't long ago I was still in a government suit. The bottom line is, when you talk about travel, now business travel, which the government did a lot of, if you talk to the experts, leisure travel will come back first on the domestic side, and business travel will slowly return. Now, we all know we've gone to telework, and that is not gonna, no one sees that changing because it's been proven the work can be done efficiently and not be in brick and mortar, or folks can be away from their primary offices. And so when you tie that, I see the government still doing that, but still making things happen. And in order to, so that means IT even and cyber requirements, right? Or even more important, because it's away from the brick and mortar. So as we have the government employees are working, a lot of them from home. So those are some of the key areas that I think you can expect. It's still a requirement. And I think the projections, when the stuff I've been reading and the research, we did 600 billion in September. That's going to rise even this FY in the federal government space. So.
Thank you, Tommy. Appreciate that. Yes, the 600 billion didn't include the $2+ trillion given to agencies to combat coronavirus. That was also spent. So thanks so much for that. And good information for small businesses to look to those areas if that's their capability. They will continue to thrive in those areas.
And I'd just like to add, for the folks on the screen, Katrina asked if you were taking a lot of notes. There are 4 handouts that Victor and his team will post on the information that I provided today. One key thing, the SBA's resource guide, which you can get off of their website, page 33 is where you find the thing about the financing that the SBA provides, financing opportunities.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Sam, I think you're going to bring us home today. All right. And so this will be our last question for the panel before we move to our officially to the Q&A section of the agenda. Sam, are there any potential other actions that are being considered by Congress for small business contracting that you can share with our audience today?
The three things: goals, thresholds, and consolidation. Those are the three big areas where you might expect some action from Congress and from the administration. First, on goals, the government has made a commitment to small business to spend 23% of its contracting dollars with small business. And I've been at SBA long enough to remember when we didn't make that 23%, where it's hard to make that 23%. But the world has changed. There's more small businesses in government contracting than when I started, and agencies are shifting from supplies to services where there are more small businesses involved. So we've been able to meet the 23% goal for several years running. We were at almost 25.9% last year. So you could see an adjustment of those goals, and particularly the goals for working with socially and economically disadvantaged businesses. Those are businesses owned by socially and economically disadvantaged individuals, or by entities like Indian tribes and Alaska Native corporations. That goal is 5%, but the government has far surpassed those numbers lately. And there's an emphasis in this administration on reaching out to disadvantaged individuals and disadvantaged entities to contract with them using government dollars. On the second one, with thresholds, if you're in the 8A program at SBA, which is the program for socially and economically disadvantaged individuals, you can get a contract without competition, what we call sole source contract, at $4.5 million for services and $7 million for manufacturing, for supplies. Those levels have been roughly the same for a long time. They've been adjusted here and there for inflation. It used to be 4, now it's 4.5. In the last Congress, there were some proposals to raise those thresholds or calculate the thresholds differently, so you would be able to get larger contracts. And you'll probably see some sort of effort again to look at the sole source thresholds in the 8A program. There are also sole source thresholds for the other programs, women-owned, hub-zone, and service-able vet. And Congress may be looking at those as well. Those are set by statute. That's not something that SBA can play with. It's something that Congress has to go in and adjust to keep up with developments in government contracting. And then on the third one, with consolidation, I mentioned before, and Cameron touched on it as well, agencies are using category management vehicles. Those are things like OASIS Small Business, NITAC, CIO SB4, Alliance, Polaris, all these kind of terms that you're hearing. Those are big category management vehicles, billions of dollars going through that. And that's great if you're on the vehicle. If you have a contract on that vehicle, that's good for you. But if you're a new small business, and maybe some of the hundreds of businesses that are on this call are new small businesses, and it can be challenging to get onto those vehicles. You have to know about them. You have to have the right offer. You have to have the right experience. But even more so, there are performance requirements. You have to have a menu of supplies and services in order to get access to those vehicles. And what that means is newer, smaller small businesses may have a harder time as agencies move more of their purchases to those category management vehicles through consolidation. There were some efforts in the last Congress to carve out some of the government purchasing from those vehicles. That was not successful, but I would anticipate that Congress will look at that again, and particularly small businesses that are on the wrong side of category management, that are left out, may be seeking for some redress of the situation that they found themselves in. And in particular, there have been some studies from auditors saying that up to 60% of the contracts that are being lost through category management are small business contracts. So it's a big issue for small businesses as they find it harder and harder to break into government contracting if agencies are moving to category management.
Well, now it's the time that you all likely have been waiting for. Time for questions and answer phase of our agenda. I'm confident that many of you are eager to pose your questions to this esteemed panel. So to ask your question, please use the Zoom chat function. All right, so the first question here, could you expand on category management vehicles and please provide examples? So I think I'll take that one to help the panel out here a little bit. So category management vehicles are contracts that can be utilized by multiple entities, either within an agency or across government. They assist the acquisition workforce in streamlining their procurement process. However, most importantly, it helps the government manage spend and take advantage of their dollars, the best advantage of their large dollars of spend for specific and like categories of work, such as IT, other professional services, medical categories, just to name a couple of those. You will find most of these vehicles on what we call the GSA schedule. So if you Google and use that term or look to gsa.gov, their website, you'll find their supply schedules. That is a place that you will also see category management type vehicles. It's to drive spend and utilize what's called spend under management principles for the federal government, so they're able to take advantage of the large dollars that we spend in like categories. There are other vehicles such as the CIOS P3, which is the current vehicle, and the CIOS P4, which is an IT vehicle that the whole federal government utilizes that will likely be competed later on in this year. Sometimes agencies, HHS specifically, has vehicles that agency uses. Those are called GWACs, or they're actually just called strategic sourcing vehicles. Again, it's another type of contract. They are all contracts, but they fall under the categories of what we utilize called category management. And it's really to drive streamlining of our processes, but more for the government to have a better buying power on the spend that we have in common categories across agencies. Hopefully that helps and answers your question. Next question is, we specialize in steel fabrication and erection. Is there any opportunity available now for bidding? We've been registered in business since 2005 and could use some work. We are SBE, MBE, and DBE. What I would recommend, a couple things, is that you would visit beta.sam.gov. And that is the government point of entry for work other than those that will go on what we've been talking about today, those category management or strategic sourcing vehicles. If you are on a strategic sourcing vehicle currently, I would assume that it's one that is within the steel fabrication and erection line of business. If that were the case, I would reach out to the contracting officer that is responsible for that contract. Otherwise, one of the best ways for you to get information is to look to betasam.gov to determine if there are opportunities in that area. Are there other panelists that want to add anything to that?
I think you covered it clearly.
Yeah.
Tommy.
Okay, all right, thank you. Next is a question, considering 2019, 2020, do we think gender diversity women and African Americans will unintentionally receive the lion's share of contracts versus, say, American Indian, who get nearly zero play for national diversity organizations at PR initiatives? I would say, I don't think any of us would be able to answer that question. I do believe that it's important that you take a look at some Buy Indian Act modernization that was just released maybe about 30, 45 days ago. There are some additional adds to that modernization and to that act that extends what will some of the authorities to utilize Buy Indian. I think that will help you if you just maybe kind of search for modernization of Buy Indian. That will likely help you. I get that question a little.
And Katrina, if I could jump in to give some details on the 8A program. SBA's 8A program is the program for businesses owned by socially and economically disadvantaged individuals. You can be a member of some minority groups and be presumed to be socially and economically disadvantaged. And one of the groups is to be a member of a state or federally recognized Indian tribe. So if you're a member of a state or federally recognized Indian tribe, you can be presumed to be socially disadvantaged. And then when you go to SBA to try to get into the 8A program, you would prove your economic disadvantage, but you would be able to get the presumption for the social disadvantage. And the 8A program is a long lasting program. It's been around since the 60s for SBA, and it allows firms that are getting started or have just a few years of experience in government contracting to get access to sole source contracts, to get access to business development through SBA. There's specialized training for firms that are in the 8A program. And then also agencies will issue set-asides. I think people are familiar with small business set-asides, but there's some contracts that are set aside for just the 8A program too. And if you're in the 8A program, then you can get access to those 8A set-asides. So it's a very powerful program, and you get the help from SBA at the local level and at the national level too.
Thank you, Sam. I don't know how I could have forgotten about the 8A program. I appreciate that. Thanks a lot.
Of course, thank you.
Katrina, if I could just add just one piece what Sam said.
Go ahead.
Since I counsel folks on a daily basis, it's a great program, but you must understand what that program was designed for, to help you grow, develop and grow your business. It is not a handout to where you're going to be given a contract. Too often folks that are in it, they think, well, I got an 8A program, but I didn't get any contracts from the SBA or anybody else. It's not designed that way. But if you use it right and leverage it, you can be successful.
That's great. Thank you for that. And I'll just add just briefly onto that to let you know, as a former contracting officer, contracting officers are always looking to find good 8As, good firms that qualify as 8As to do direct awards. One, for contracting officers, it's a very streamlined approach to get to an award. So back to what Mr. Marks was just saying, the same strategies that you would otherwise use to market your business and your capability, and the things that the panelists have talked to you about today with regards to taking a look at opportunities, trying to get an opportunity to talk to program officials and contracting officers, you'll still need to do the same thing to market your capabilities, to get in front of government officials, to let them know about you, and let them know what your 8A status is. If you've got a capability statement, make sure that your statuses are listed or included on that capability statement, and make sure that you're marketing that. Very, very important. Hope that helps you. All right, next question. As a new small business, where can I find mentorship guidance? Tommy, you or Sam, do you want to take that?
Well, I'll take a stab at it. If you're a startup, you want to avail yourself to the Procurement Technical Assistance Centers. They are designed, funded by DOD, mandated by Congress, and they're designed to help and assist companies that are starting up. The next place or simultaneously at the SBA, because they help in business startups and development. The Minority Business Development Agency that I run, we work with much more mature companies that have like a minimum of $1 million revenue, but our door is open to answer questions to any company for that matter, try to get you in the right place where you need to be.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there are certainly government, federal government operated or funded sources of assistance like the OSDBU or like the PTAX or the SBA district office. In addition to that, if you're in a particular industry, you might know of an established firm in that industry that would be willing to mentor you and help you get into a mentor protege program. SBA has a very successful mentor protege program. I think there are over 2,000 mentor protege pairs in that program right now. And some other agencies have mentor protege programs too for contracting. The key there though, is you have to find a good mentor. You know, it's like finding, especially when the program first started out, people were just kind of flooding and saying, oh, well, I found a mentor. We find out a few months later that relationship didn't quite work out. You know, you got to break up now. And that's a lot harder to break it up than it is to find somebody in the first place. So there may be opportunities out there. I know before the pandemic, SBA was running a mentor protege conference where we'd have, you know, in-person matchmaking between potential mentors and potential proteges. I'm sure there are virtual opportunities for that, but there are ways that you can use assistance or, you know, trade groups, that sort of thing, to try to find qualified mentors and participate in these mentor protege programs.
Thank you, Sam. Appreciate that. As Sam mentioned, your local OSDBUs and your in the federal agencies that you're interested in, some of them will hold training opportunities where you'll be able to get some of that mentorship and actually more guidance than anything to kind of help you along as you build your business. And so I would say that you take advantage of that mentorship or training guidance. I should call it training guidance not to confuse you, that SBA is offering and that your OSDBUs are offering, that PTAX are offering, so that you will likely get very, very consistent information. And I would take advantage of that if I were you, to ensure that you continue to build your business. Right, the next question here is, can the business that has been an 8A certified between September 10th, 2020 and January 13th, 2021 be included in the 1-year extension because they have equally been impacted by the pandemic, or as other 8As that have been provided this 1-year extension? Sam, can you take that for us?
Sure. I think the question is very informed about the 1-year extension. When that extension is required by a law. It was actually in 2 different laws: Consolidated Appropriations Act, National Defense Authorization Act, and both of those laws cut off the eligibility at September 9th, 2020. So after that date, the law makes you ineligible.
Yeesh. Wow. Okay, thank you very much. So here's an 8A firm and HubZone, general contractor. How do we find the sole source work that was mentioned? So again, I would say that look to the agency in which you're interested in their mission, where you feel that your capabilities would add value to their mission. And again, market yourselves to those agencies to find out about their work. Take a look at betasam.gov to determine if there's work there that matches the capabilities that you have. Additionally, reach out to the OSDBUs of the agencies that you're interested in working with, and they may be able to give you information on opportunities as well. There's small business specialists that work for every agency, and those small business specialists typically stay connected with our procurement line of business, and they're typically very informed about the work that is ongoing in those particular offices.
I'll add to that and say if small businesses haven't spent some time familiarizing yourselves with the filtering features within beta.sam, I would strongly encourage you to, because you can filter by your specific business opportunities and your classifications as a small business to see exactly what current business opportunities announcements are available that may be a set aside wholly for you. And that could be an 8A sole source, an 8A set aside, any of the small business categories. You can filter to your specific market. So I would say if you haven't spent some time sort of learning how to use the filtering technologies within beta.sam.gov, that's a really good value use of your afternoon to get familiar with those filters.
Okay, thank you, Cameron. So I'm going to double task here so that I can maybe hit 2 questions while I only ask this last question. So for those asking about recommendations on when you're trying to break into government contracting, it is best for you to find prime contractors who are very familiar with federal contracting and try to partner with them, become a subcontractor. Again, marketing your capabilities, even with them, it's very important as well. But that will help your company to grow, help you to learn a little bit about federal contracting before you try to, and also get some past performance before you actually propose and try to get your own contract as a prime contractor. Last question, and this one is to Dr. Webb. Can government grants be awarded to private for-profit entities if in collaboration with public infrastructure?
I guess the easiest answer, which is not really an answer, is sometimes. I think what the primary criterion would be is who is actually the grantee. So it goes back to my point about eligibility requirements. If many of the grants are only to either a government entity or a nonprofit entity, then you can be listed as a subcontract or a subgrantee, not a subcontractor, but a contractor or a subgrantee under that grant to fulfill a specific purpose. So when the grantee prepares the budget, there's a line that says contracts or other, and you would be listed under there as a contract performing X, Y, and Z and how much money that would go for. So it is possible. There is a lot of grant programs that do not fund for-profit entities directly because of that whole public purpose idea. So I would look at trying to find an entity that is eligible, find out what their needs are, and then see if you can fulfill that, which also wouldn't guarantee you, but it would also add to your experience in showing that you have experience with contracts and supporting government purposes.
Thank you, Dr. Webb. So to our audience, that concludes our questions and answer session for today. Thank you for joining us. I would say this was time well spent. Thanks for investing your time with us. To our wonderful panelists, thank you as well. Thank you for sharing your insights with our industry partners. I'm positive that they've got many takeaways from the information you've shared today. So now I will turn the agenda over to Barbara Bigelow, who's also a part of our HHS OSDBU office. She'll be concluding our program today.
Thank you, Katrina. Well, I believe we actually have one more polling question to pose for today. And that question, I do believe, is, do you know when and where is a fantastic time to match with prime contractors and other government sources for subcontracting? Good answer. 62% said the 2021 Small Business National Virtual Conference, Building Back the Heart of the Economy, is the correct answer. I want you to mark your calendar for more details. Visit our website at www.hhsaccesstosuccess.com for this and other information. Katrina, I want to thank you, our Associate Deputy Assistant Secretary for Acquisition and the Acting Director of OSTABU for such a wonderful job today moderating, and thanking you for your leadership as well. I want to again thank all of our panelists, Tommy Marks from MBDA, Sam Lee from SBA, Cameron Hernandez, never, letting us down, always here for us, and Dr. Sandra Webb from Administration for Children and Family. It has been great listening to each of you and learning from each of you today. And what a wealth of information that has came forth and being provided to our small businesses, from new legislation coming down the pipes to grants and contracts and the different contract and assistance vehicles, and even how small businesses can strategize and position themselves for opportunities. I just wanted to encourage our small businesses to continue to stay engaged and stay connected. For you are the reason for what we do, why we do what we do. And we are hoping that what has been shared today will be an added value. I would like to also thank our stakeholders and all of our resource partners for their continued support to all of our events. A great big thank you to our contractor, Strategic Management LLC, for supporting this event, making it successful. And to my director, Linda Waters, over administration and programs and national outreach. Great leadership from her as well. And I just wanted to remind everyone to complete our survey for today. For if you complete the survey, you will receive the presentation slides and additional information from today's listening lab. And for those of you who have yet not registered with HHS, we would like for you to visit our small business experience system here, our website, and that is at www.mysbcx.hhs.gov. You want to make sure you register in that system with regards to doing business with HHS. Also, we do know that we do have some unanswered questions today. We weren't able to get to all of them. But I do want to let you know that after the session later on, we will be posting the answered questions to our A2S website, so you can visit that later in light of seeing the answers to your questions. And to our acquisition workforce, I wanted to let you know all of those who were in attendance today will receive 1.5 continuous learning points for our listening lab session today. Again, I want to thank all of you for joining us. And this concludes our virtual listening lab.